I want to thank the commissioners for being here after over 500 days of not having an oversight hearing. I'm glad we're finally doing that. We've talked a lot today about the need for expanding rural broadband connectivity, accurate mapping, and interagency cooperation to ensure we aren't double building in the process. So I want to echo these concerns and the need to build out the rural networks, rural broadband, rural networks. I think there needs to be a huge percentage going to rural America instead of inner cities where there may already be existing networks and not just keep spending billions of tax dollars repeatedly on the same inner city neighborhoods. We've also talked a lot today about spectrum and the scarcity of spectrum and the need for continuing and expanding auction authority to make more spectrum available and ensuring that the spectrum we make available is usable for industry. I also want to echo those concerns, but this ground has pretty much been covered by the time you get to me. So Commissioner Carr, I want to ask you, in your testimony, you mentioned the need to push back against the abuses of big tech, and I especially want to focus on anti-discrimination provisions that you mentioned. What do you think we in Congress need to do to protect First Amendment rights of conservative content creators, local businesses, local broadcasters, and others who feel they've been trampled on by big tech, keeping the importance of that multiplicity of information sources that you mentioned in your testimony in mind?
Thank you, Congressman. Thanks for your work on this issue of reining in big tech. I think first and foremost, we have to fundamentally overhaul Section 230. There are portions of Section 230 that are pro-speech, that create incentives to leave speech up, particularly political speech. And there's portions of Section 230 that today have been misread by courts, as Justice Thomas have walked through, to give them, internet companies, carte blanche to remove any speech that they want. That's not the intent of Congress in Section 230. And I think Congress needs to amend Section 230 in a way that is going to promote more speech. But 230 reform alone isn't going to be enough. That's why we need to impose some basic transparency obligations on big tech. Right now, it is a total black box. Some speech is left up, some was taken down. There's no consistency at all. I think we need some basic non-discrimination that could take a lot of different forms, whether it's treating like cases alike or looking at legislation in the Senate that Senator Wicker has that talks about trying to protect speech that is political in nature from discriminate takedowns. And I think there's steps we can do in terms of user empowerment. Right now, the whole point of Section 230 was to give a little bit of balance between content moderation that websites do and empowering, giving users tools to engage. And right now, that balance has shifted too far. And I think one step that we could do would be to empower users to make their own content moderation decisions. If you want Fox News to filter your feed before you see it, maybe plug that in. If you want MSNBC to do it, plug that in. There can be third parties that offer ways to do content filtering, or someone can just choose the Wild West version. But if we give people more power to make those decisions, I think that's a pro-speech reform that we'd be better off, because then we can have robust, wide-open political debates, which we're better for, because that's how we solve problems in this country. It's not by keeping ideas off the table, but by having robust discussions about them.
I would love to see this committee or the full committee deal with 230 protections and have big tech come back in where we can delve into that. Move on, Commissioner Symington. I know you're a big proponent of looking at regulation of receivers as a way to increase efficiency of how we use spectrum based on its scarce resource. How would you address the concerns of industry about the potential burdens of such regulations, and what are the benefits of ensuring that government users of spectrum have to upgrade their standards to be more efficient?
This is a great question, because the difficulty of taking receiver standards up in the past has always been that it's a much, much, much more difficult question than physical assessment of transmission. You can put a transmitter in a box and test if it's emitting according to spec. For a receiver, you have to field test it. And you have to field test it under a wide variety of interference conditions. It's an exponentially more complicated problem, much more like a large research lab's R&D function than something that the Commission is capable of doing. And that's exactly what we don't want to do here. So hopefully industry is being assured right here, right now, that we are not going to cram burdensome regulations down on them. Instead, the idea is going to be to assess what constitutes an acceptable threshold of interference between every band and service right here, right now, and then to be able to compare and contrast them to understand where it is that receivers' improvements could lead to the availability of guard bands for commercialization or to otherwise greater spectral efficiency. I think that's the last free real estate we're likely to find in the spectrum, but it's very valuable, so hopefully that's how we'll get there.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you. I yield back.